And hello, everyone, and welcome to Get a Grip with Coach Elex. I am your host, Coach Elex, and with me is the one and only
Stephen, the medium.
And together we become Steelex.
That's right, Steelex in the house.
So welcome to Get a Grip with Steelex. So, Mr. Stephen, the medium, how are you?
I'm good. I'm really, really good.
Yeah. I know. I am so I'm so good. Stephen and I just came off a fabulous weekend. Last weekend we went to New York City, and we had an amazing weekend. And I kid you not, I'm serious. This is not a joke. For those of you who follow Stephen, he's now friends with the Rockettes. So I expect to have the Rockettes for dinner at any time. So stay tuned, because we will have an event with the Rockettes here in Cape Cod. Stephen, tell people how you became friends with the Rockettes.
Just my charm. What's there to say? It's just
it's a little bit more than that. So give them the details.
So I have been dying to get back to the Rockettes because we haven't been last year with COVID. And the year before, because Elix had back surgery in December, so we never got to New York City. So I have been dying to get there. So we did last Saturday, and we were in the front row, as we always are. You know, I plan all of it. Elix just has to show up. And I took a couple of videos, not many, because I said to Elix, I don't want to take a lot of videos because, you know, when you're taking a video, it's great because you have it, but you're missing in the present part of the show because you're paying attention to the video. So I just took a couple very short videos, and I very excitedly posted them to my Instagram account. And the next morning, I had 2 messages from 2 different Rockettes saying that they're very happy that we went to the show, and they're featured in the video, and can they have the video? So, of course, I was dying of excitement because anyone who knows me, as you just mentioned, Elix, I'm a Rockette freak, and I responded them.
And by the way, there's a lot of evidence. If you haven't watched our latest live, the Rockettes make an appearance because he also has the Rockette doll collection. So this is, if you think we're exaggerating the subject matter, I promise you, not one bit exaggeration here.
Well, and snow globes I have. So I have a lot of stuff from the Rockettes. It's just a lot. And so I sent the video to these 2 Rockettes, and I was very excited. And then later on that day, I was perusing through Instagram, and what? My video was on the Rockettes' Instagram page or post. They actually used my video that I sent these 2 Rockettes and put it on their Rockette page. And I said to Elix that I had posted the video, and the last time I looked, it was probably like a little over 100 views. And when a couple of the Rockettes actually liked it and made comments on it, then I looked back and it was like 800 and something views. It was pretty wild. So I was very, very excited, and I posted on my Facebook and Instagram page that the Rockettes took my video that I videoed when we were in the show, and one of my friends posted something on the Rockette site. Give Steven credit, because they didn't give me credit, and no sooner does that happen, and one of the Rockettes reposted it with some comments, and in the bottom of the video says Steven the Medium. Is that like so cool?
Yeah, that's the way it should be, and
yes.
It is totally cool. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. First of all, yes, I do complain because Stephen drags me to the show every year, and for the most part, the show has been the same every year with a few very slight changes here and there. But this time, because last year there was no show, so they really took the time to revamp it. And I have to say, it was really awesome. I really enjoyed it. It was like watching a brand new show. And being first row, like no obstructions, doesn't hurt at all. So I'm very grateful.
And Elix, when I showed you the video, I actually pointed out one rocket that was in the video and said to you, this was like I think right after the show, I think maybe when we were in the hotel room, that I couldn't stop looking at this one particular rocket. First of all, they're all adorable, but this one was so adorable. But her energy was so big. And like I said that to Elix, and she was one of the rockets that reached out to me.
You must be a psychic.
I maybe I can be, and my cousin Holly is going to New York this weekend, and she just sent me a message, and then Elix told me the same thing, that all the shows, the rocket shows, are canceled today because of production
COVID
testing positive.
Yeah, the breakthrough cases of COVID. But I will say, going back to our New York trip, it was such a great trip. There's many things that we did sort of new for us. We took the Azela. I've always driven, and the last time it took us 5.5 hours to get from our home to New York City. And I told Steven, I never again will I take 5.5 hours drive.
That was sitting in traffic.
Sitting. It was horrible. So we took the Azela, and what an amazing easy ride. We took it from Providence, and that was amazing. I also had plans to meet with 2 friend clients, and the plans fell through at the very last minute. Now, if anyone who goes to New York City for the holidays, it's impossible to get dinner reservations at the places that are known for the Christmas scene, that they're very special. So one of those places was Tavern on the Green, and Stephen and I have been there many years ago. But I thought, for Christmas, it's so pretty. I wish we could make a reservation, but of course they had nothing. But after our friends cancel, I don't know, something made me check, Spirit, make me check, and there was one opening available. And I told Stephen, we're going, and so we score a reservation at Tavern on the Green for holiday brunch. And was that not awesome, Stephen?
Oh my God, it really was amazing.
And we got to see our nephew and his wife-to-be, Maria, Tristan and Maria, and that was awesome. And it was like a fabulous trip. Was it the same thing for you?
Yeah, and we saw Carrie Bradshaw's apartment.
Oh my God! Yes,
Sex in the City.
Yeah. So Stephen dragged me to that, and but I'm, it's like he says, "Let's go. We're gonna go to the Sex in the City apartment." I'm like, "Oh my God, we've walked like 20 miles already. Are you for real?" And he's like, "Yes, I'm for real." So I just go along because it's easier to just go along than to argue. But it was fun, and that sort of made me watch the new Sex and the City. It's not called Sex and the City, right?
And just like that.
And just like that. And I have to say, I'm now, sort of like, what do you call it? Hooked, because the first episode was like very traumatic. So I now need to watch everything else. But, and then of course, Stephen, we're Ubering everywhere in the city. So we took Ubers to and from wherever. Aside from walking, of course, you get to do so much walking in the city. And then Stephen sees while we heading to the hotel from Midtown, he sees this sign for a chocolate store. And all you saw was the oldest chocolate store. And he's like, we got to go. And so we ended up going to Lilac, and that was fabulous. Really, like I'm like, damn, that you'd score something really awesome. That was one of the best chocolates I've ever had in my life.
I honestly, I think it was. I've always been there's a lot of chocolates I like. Godiva is one of them, but I gotta say, Lilac, I think is top to my list.
Yeah, no, Godiva, as good as it is, doesn't even come close to Lilac. And of course, we couldn't. How could you go to New York City and not visit, your traditional delis? And we went to a Jewish bakery for bagels, and it was amazing. I cannot wait till we have an opportunity to go back again to New York City.
Murray's. That's where that was the.
Murray's. That's right. That's right. Actually, I posted an awesome picture, and they also picked it up on their website. I didn't tell you that.
No, no, I didn't. But I'm just laughing because we went running first, and then we walked. We went over to Murray's, and when we got to Murray's, Elix realizes that his mask fell out as we were running, across the, next to the Hudson River. So I went in. Elix couldn't go in because he didn't have a mask, and I order everything and get our bagels and coffee. And there's these picnic tables outside of Murray's, and it was nippy out, but it was nice to sit outside. So I come out, and Elix is at one of these picnic tables, and I sit across from him, and we're starting to open everything up, and this woman, her husband's in the deli, and she comes to the side of us, and these picnic tables were pretty big, and says, can is it okay for me to sit on the other end? And her husband obviously was gonna join her, and we were like, yeah. But when she sat down, for some reason, the way she sat down, the whole picnic table moved, like the whole thing moved, like it was like a mini earthquake. And she was like, oh my god. And it was just spur of the moment. I just looked at her and said, too many bagels. And Elix was like, what is wrong? What's wrong with you?
Yeah, just like that. Yeah, he just looks at her with a straight face. Too many bagels, and the poor woman felt so self-conscious about taking one more bite out of that bagel that she was having. So, anyways, that's honestly, this is what living with Steven looks like. It's like a comedy show every day, all the time. So, anyways, I think we are getting ready to take a break. But, today's conversation, it's really an amazing conversation because I wanted to bring in a subject that really matters, especially during the holiday season, because we're starting to get ready to wrap up 2021, create the context for a really empowering 2022. And, of course, this is the time where we're buying presents for ourselves, for everyone else. And I thought, what is the greatest present that we can give ourselves and we can give somebody else? And that really is the present of forgiveness. So we're going to have a conversation about forgiveness. This is a very thought-provoking conversation because forgiveness is really a very hard thing to do, in particular when we're talking about something that has really impacted you or affected you, or when you're in a toxic relationship with a loved one, a family member. It's a difficult thing. It's easy to talk about, but it's not easy really to really take on and embrace fully. So we're going to talk about forgiveness, and and of course I'm going to inquire Steven to give us the perspective from the spirit world as well. So Scuse, we are going to take a break. Of course, by the way, one of the things I'm inviting everyone, you can call. I know that sometimes our subjects are very thought-provoking and people feel very, afraid or, shy. They don't want to call because they just feel they're going to expose themselves. But this is really, it's an opportunity for you to chat and perhaps even have a one-on-one coaching conversation with Coach Elix. So if you are if this conversation calls to you, make sure you call 508-222-1320. We're going to take a break and we'll be right back. And hello, everyone, and welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Helix. I'm your host, Coach Helix. With me, the one and only
Stephen, the medium, is in the house.
Stephen the Medium is in the house. The one and only and the naughtiest of all, Stephen the Medium, who just told a lady in New York City that she had one too many bagels. Just saying. But today, Stephen, we are talking about the greatest gift that anyone can give themselves during this holiday season. And in my opinion, my humble opinion, it's the gift of forgiveness. Forgiveness to oneself, forgiveness to others. And, forgiveness is an active process. It's an active process in which you make a conscious decision, to let go of negative feelings, whether the other person deserves it or not. And what you want to get from this conversation is that forgiveness is a choice. You don't have to. Nothing you hear today, it's a have to, by the way. And nothing you hear today from me, and this applies to this show or any show for that matter, is an absolute. It's an opinion, and it's one possible way, and I share it with you as one possible way that may empower you. If it doesn't call to you, then turn the page and go look at somebody else's, way. That's okay too. Forgiveness is also a personal journey. And there's no rules, there's no time limits. So the goal of the show, why I wanted to do a show on forgiveness, especially during this time of the year, is to really help all of you listening examine and overcome your own unresolved bitterness, grudges, and grievances. And sometimes that may even be unresolved grievances that you have with yourself, or perhaps that you have with others, including important people in your life. So I know for me personally, when I think about forgiveness, in particular later on, I'm going to talk about 8 keys to forgiveness based on an article by Robert Enright that called my attention a few years ago. One of the things that immediately comes to mind, and Stephen, you know about this because you experienced it with me, is when my father was diagnosed with multiple myeloma. I had a very rocky relationship with my father. I suffer from a lot of mental, physical abuse, and I lived very resentful, and forgiveness was a very hard thing for me to even imagine. And, I really experienced true forgiveness when I went to Puerto Rico and he was diagnosed, and he just looked at me and he said nothing, yet he said so much in that moment. And then he burst into tears. Stephen, you were by my side when that happened.
Yes, I was.
And he burst into tears, and he just he hugged me, and he cried, and he cried. And in that moment, I just knew, there was, again, no words spoken. I just knew my heart told me, this is the time you got to forgive. And I did. And I just did. And it was one of the most freeing moments of my life. And every time I think of forgiveness, or I think about how hard it may be, I go back to that moment. And I remind myself of what that felt like. And again, there was no resistance. I don't know. I can't even explain it. It was just a beautiful moment for me because I was able to just simply let go. But it was also a beautiful moment for him because he needed that. He knew, by the way, multiple myeloma, he knew he was going to die. He lived 3 months after diagnosis. So this wasn't, it was what he needed to complete for himself, to be able to let go and to go peacefully, if you will. So that was my experience. Stephen, do you have a personal experience or thoughts on forgiveness?
Yeah, it's really hard. I mean, I say that in all seriousness. I think it's one of the, for me, I don't think it's one. I think it's the hardest thing for me, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that feel the same way, like me.
Why do you think it's so hard though?
Well, I guess the answer to that would be like using in like just bringing up an example. Like I have seen, which I'm sure a lot of people have seen in their lifetimes, like if a woman lost her son, by a shooting, and the person who shot her son and the son's dead is in jail, and the woman says that she's forgiven him, or or she may even talk to him, or just the fact of her saying, I've forgiven him for killing my son. It's so hard for me to wrap my head around how you can do that. It's just being very honest. It's something that I put myself in the woman's, and I know, just like yourself, the example I'm using, you with your dad, is an incredible place to get to, and I actually strive to get there.
Yeah.
It's so hard for me to think if that was me. I mean, to be honest, in my head is like, how the, can you forgive the person that killed your son? And logically, I get it. If she doesn't, she's holding on to it. It's poison on her end. I get all that. It's just still taking that last step of forgiveness is like, this guy killed your son. And then I'm sure I'm not alone here.
Of course not. And that's why, again, emphasis on what I said earlier, forgiveness is a personal journey. There's no right or wrong way, and there's no set rules or time limits for that matter. Because when you talk about how could you forgive somebody that's done you so wrong, right? I related to that conversation for many years. For many years, I could not even imagine the possibility of being able to let go of the hurt and the pain that I felt, given the abuse that I went through, as a young kid. I mean, think about it. When you're a young kid and you live those horrendous experiences, you grow up holding on to that. For me, just like what you described, it was unimaginable. And then this happened, and somehow, I don't know, because it's not like I have a recipe. I don't know. It just happened. Now this time of year, of course, the calendar year, completing one year, getting ready for the next one, often makes us very excited for a rebirth of sorts, or a fresh start come January 1st. That's, everyone. We start talking about, those New Year's resolutions, and everyone is so excited for that, rebirth, that fresh start. And it's a natural time for reflection, for change, a time to ask what went well, what could we do differently in 2022. And forgiveness is an opportunity to change the narrative. It really does have the power to transform lives, not only to support people in dealing with issues in their own lives, but also building a culture of tolerance, resilience for oneself, hope, and empathy. And as you learn to release the anger, the resentment, the hostility, that when you're holding on to that, forgiveness is almost like the vehicle that creates that opening to release that anger, that resentment, that hostility. And as you do that, you begin to feel empathy, you begin to feel compassion, and sometimes even affection for the person who wronged you. Not sometimes, not all the time. By the way, that's a quote from John Hopkins. So may not. Don't listen to this as an absolute. You may not, and that's okay. There's no right, there's no wrong, there's no way, no particular way that forgiveness needs to happen. And that's, if you find yourself listening to Stephen and really connecting with what Stephen said, that's okay. It's perfectly okay. That's part of your journey. And I don't want you to listen to this conversation from that place of, oh my God, what am I doing wrong? What do I need to do differently? No, just listen, and allow, allow the journey to just be the journey, but be open for new possibilities. What do you think, Stephen?
Yeah, I'm still waiting for the possibilities.
Well, good. That's why you have me here, and that's why you have spirit on your side as well,
Yes.
And both of us will help you create the possibilities. And that actually, with that said, I'm very curious. We're about to take a break, but when we come back, Stephen, I am curious for you to give me your perspective on forgiveness from the spirit world perspective. Like when you read people, and this must be something that comes up, and I'm
Yes.
sure it comes up often.
Yes.
What is that perspective? So I love for you to share that. But let's take a break. And again, if you want to join the conversation, please do so. 508-222-1320. We're going to take a break and we'll come right back. And hello, everyone. Welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Elix. I am your host, Coach Elix. With me, the wonderful, the one and only.
Stephen, the attorney / medium.
Yes, and the other part of Steelix. So together we are Steelix coming
I'm the
live.
front part.
You are the front part, and I am the Elix part. There you go. So we are talking today about forgiveness, the greatest gift that you can give yourself in this holiday season. And Stephen, before the break, I wanted to bring you in and ask you from the perspective of spirit, what have you learned about forgiveness?
Well, on that end, I've learned a ton. Just amazing, beautiful messages that I've given with all my readings. I mean, it really starts, Elix, and for everybody who is listening, it starts from a place of there's no forgiveness really in spirit, because when you get there, there's, in reference to like where spirit's coming from, not the messages they're giving the people I'm reading, but where they're coming from, there's no such thing as forgiveness, because there's nothing to forgive. Everything is pure love. So when we get there, we lose and let go of I always say the earthly junk, every emotion, whether it's anger or sadness or jealousy or whatever it is, they don't have any of that. It comes from pure love. It's just energy, love, and whatever they can do to make their loved ones here in the physical earth be in a better place. That's all they care about. But in the sense when they're giving messages to people I'm reading and people are holding on to things, that is I was going to say most likely, but it actually is the number one message that Spirit will give and try to help people I'm reading is to forgive themselves, or if they're having some kind of issue with family members or friends, whatever, is to forgive them. Yeah, I mean, the Spirit will always remind me to tell people how short this life is, what holding on is doing to themselves, and every single thing that you pretty much have already said, Elix, is exactly the perspective that Spirit's coming from. And the cool thing is that Spirit, when they're giving these messages or I'm connecting with them, it's so easy for them, because they don't know in the circuit that they're in, they don't need forgiveness because nothing needs to be forgiven. So it's amazing. I've learned a lot, way different perspectives, and it's just, I think it's sort of like I don't know, maybe the way I grew up, a stubborn thing, or I'm not really sure, but I definitely have improved and gotten way better than where I was, but I'm still, as you said, Elix, it's an individual thing, and I'm still working on it.
So let me ask you, Stevens, if you are reading someone, and of course, from a spirit perspective, there's no such thing as forgiveness because they're not holding to anything, right? They've gone
Right.
into a different place.
Right.
But the person, say you're reading their daughter or their son or somebody, or their husband and wife, and that person is holding on to, resentment. They're angry with others about losing their loved one. They're blaming others, and they are holding on to that negativity. How does Spirit, how do they create that space so that that person can let go of that? What would they tell you?
Well, I think they start off with either having the people I'm reading reminded of how short this life is, and a lot of times it's also about focusing on the person that I'm reading's gifts, like every one of us has a gift, I believe, and I know that everyone has a gift. And I think sometimes, they know if someone is very stubborn, or if someone's like right on the edge of just ready to jump to forgive, and they're very close and they just need a little extra help, or someone who is like, putting their feet in the sand and not wanting to move. So a lot of times they'll bring up, they'll talk about the gifts and that, in a very kind way, almost like bring up that you're dishonoring your gift, you're dishonoring who you are, sort of things like that. I mean, there's no other place that is so smart, so slick, so, because they see the past, future, present, so they know exactly what needs to come out of my mouth for them to communicate. But with that said, that doesn't mean that, in an hour period of time that the person is just, completely, it does happen that someone will actually say to me in tears that they've been holding on to something for 30 years and they let it go, which is, usually a majority of people. But there are some, there's some people, I think early on in my readings, you probably remember the story. I was reading, two women, and I started with one, and I told her grandmother was here, and she said, that has to be my mom's mom. And I said, she just said her name is like it's an MR, like Mary or Marie, and her face just completely changed and said, no, that's my father's mother, and I do not want to hear from her. I said, what was her name? And she said, Marilyn. And I said, okay. And that grandmother just stood next to me and said, well, you're not moving forward. I'm not letting anybody else come through on you need to say what I need to say. And ultimately it ended up like amazing, wonderfully, but it was many, many weeks after when she emailed me in, and that's when I knew it ended up wonderfully. During the reading, it wasn't wonderful because I could not get anybody else in because she wanted to say whatever it was only a couple of minutes, and then she did let everyone come in. But that was a case this woman actually that I was reading said, I do not want to hear from that grandmother. Tell her to go away. So,
Wow, that's so incredible. And again, it just gives you such a unique perspective. And it's a reminder that, especially what you said at the beginning, life is so short. We're here today. We don't know whether we're going to be here, the next minute. So now there are studies also, one in particular from Johns Hopkins that says that the act of forgiveness can reap huge rewards for your health. It lowers the risk of heart attack. It improves cholesterol levels, sleep. It reduces pain, blood pressure, levels of anxiety, depression, and stress. And there's research that points to an increase in the forgiveness also increases, your health as you age. So there is a correlation between holding on to those grievances, holding on to those unresolved conflict, and the negative health impact that may have on oneself. So there's I read this article, Stephen, and I wanted to sort of share it with the listeners. This is an article that came up back in 2015, and I remember it, and then I sort of went back and sort of reread it because I wanted to bring it back. It's about 8 keys to forgiveness. It was written by Robert Enright, and it was I think it was an article that was published in Mind and Body magazine. So it's about 8 keys to forgiveness. So if you're listening, if you're looking for, okay, so what can I do? What are some specific things that I can do right now that will help me, that will put me on that pathway to forgiveness? I don't know how to, but I want to, and I want to learn how to do it. And again, I'm going to speak from the perspective of my own personal experience and how I dealt with forgiveness, in particular when my father was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, and he passed away 3 months after diagnosis. The first one is to know what forgiveness is and why it matters. When we think about forgiveness, we often think it's about making excuses or making excuses for bad behavior, or accepting by bad behavior, or pretending that it didn't happen. Or sometimes, and Stephen, you and I have had these conversations, we think it's about, we're going to, hold hands and sing Kumbaya together. It's not about any of that. Forgiveness has nothing to do with any of that. Forgiveness is really about you letting go of that negative feeling that you're holding on, and extending mercy to yourself, extending grace to yourself or to whomever has wronged you. What do you think about this one, Stephen?
I think about the example I started with about a woman who lost her son. I just, even hearing you, as much as it makes sense, and I love hearing this, it's still, Elix, it's so hard for me to get past mercy for the person who killed your son. How is that possible?
I know. And I can tell you, I get it. Again, I lived many years of my life saying there's no way I can forgive my dad. I suffered. I was beat up emotionally, physically. How can I ever forgive that behavior? But there was a time, that moment, you were there, you were right next to me, where I was just able, perhaps with the help of spirit, I was able to let it go. And honestly, the moment I did that, I almost felt like 1,000 pounds were lifted off my shoulders.
But can you explain that moment? Like, what happened? Like, how did you get there? Or do you know, Elix? Or was it just like?
Honestly, I don't know. I think in that moment, I was able to let go of my own attachment of holding on to my own righteousness, whatever that was, whether it was, believe me, I have all kinds of reasons and validations and justifications for being right and for having, the right to hold on to my upset, to my anger. But in that moment, Stephen, there was something greater that took over, and that I didn't need to be right any longer. Again, that's the only way I can explain it. I just didn't need to hold on to that, and it was the moment I let go of that attachment that I need to hold on to my rightness in somebody else's wrongness. I was able to just let go, and somehow that created that space for forgiveness. And again, I don't know. I don't have a better explanation. I really don't. But
that's a pretty good explanation.
I can just tell you, I lived it. I experienced it. The second key, according to Robert Enright, is to become forgivingly fit. Now, this one I get because this one I've learned to practice. And I know that I practice it with you, and we do help each other. So, when you think about getting fit, right? You go to the gym, you work out. The more you work out, the stronger you get, right? But if you want to get fit and strong, you have to go to the gym and you got to work out. So, so getting forgivingly, fit, it's about, being willing to build up your forgiving heart muscle. So incorporate that forgiving heart muscle workout, if you will, into your everyday life. This is according to the article. So make a conscious effort to not talk disparagingly about others. That I definitely do that. And that often we have to correct each other. And I hold myself, and if I find myself angry and upset, I've learned to hit that pause button and sort of reframe the conversation in my mind, so that I am not speaking or bring that negativity out of my mouth. Does that make sense, Stephen?
Yes.
It's not, and this is not about, by the way, I'm not saying, and this article actually says, this is not about you have to now talk about how much you love people or how much you love that one, or no, it's about reframing from saying anything that is negative. I hate that person. They're just such bad people, or they deserve to die. Things like that. The moment, it's a natural. I would say it's a natural way to think. It's a natural part of being a human to think like that. But when you do, learn to stop and reframe. So I've been reminded we need to take a break. When we come back, we'll continue with this list. 508-222-1320. We'll be right back. And hello and welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Elix. I'm your host, Coach Elix. With me, the one and only
Stephen the Medium is here.
Stephen the Medium is here. We're talking about forgiveness, the greatest gift that you can give yourself during this holiday season. And in particular, I am talking about 8 Keys to Forgiveness, which is based on an article written by Robert Enright back in 2015 for Mind and Body magazine. So the third key to forgiveness is to address your inner pain. What does that mean? It means, we talked about, I've had shows about significant moments in our lives. Those significant moments, oftentimes they happen very early on in our lives. And we hold on to those significant moments. They become blueprints for how we live our lives. And often they come attached with life sentences. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not whatever enough. And often when we experience a wrong, that wrong is almost a validation that you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, that whatever that significant moment is for you, that made wrong, it's like it's a support, it's a way to say, yes, see, you are, see what happens, this proves that you're not good enough. And that's why we sort of hold on to the wrong, and in that, it prevents us from forgiving, from sometimes forgiving ourselves and forgiving others. So this is a really important, it's important to understand what is the source of that inner pain for for you, so that you then know, you have clarity. It's not the unknown, that source of inner pain is what drives your willingness to hold on to your inability to forgive, whether yourself and others. The next key to forgiveness is about developing a forgiving mind through empathy. Empathy is the one thing that opens up. I do a lot of work in neuroscience. It opens up our executive brain, our neocortex brain, and that is the brain that allows us to have better understanding, make better decisions, have trust in ourselves, in our others. It's our brain that really allows us to lead productive lives. So if you, without empathy, you just don't have the ability to make better decisions in life. So again, develop a forgiving mind through empathy. Work that muscle of being empathetic for yourself, and connect that empathy to forgiveness is an important step in the process of forgiving. The next step is about finding meaning in suffering, in your suffering. And now that I can relate to a lot, because again, I left from very young a life where I was mentally, physically, abused, hurt. And, I grew up with very significant scars and feeling not good enough, not bright enough, not smart enough. Then to add, as I learned, about being gay, then that adds more of my validation to my own story. What I've learned to do is I've learned to take that story into a way to inspire others. So I use my story today to bring meaning to the life that I live. I live a very purposeful life, and actually the purpose of how I live my life, the source of that purpose comes from those experiences, and that part of my life where I was holding to so much anger, from so much upset, so much wrong, from being wrong for so long and so many years. Stephen, let me stop here for a moment. What are you hearing here so far?
Well, I think all the list that you're going, especially the empathy piece, makes complete sense. But unless you hear it in this presentation, I don't think a lot of people connect that as part of forgiving, which I think is just great that you're doing this.
Yeah. Thank you. And the next one is when forgiveness gets hard, and it will, call upon others' strengths. So, well, as you said, forgiveness is always hard when we're dealing with deep injustices from others. And that's why we sort of hold on to, our desire to just keep being right. It's a process. It takes time. It takes patience. It takes determination. And those are strengths that you want to hone in, as you develop the process of learning to forgive yourself and learning to forgive others. This article also invites you to surround yourself with good, wise people who support you and who have the patience to allow you time to heal your own way. So again, there's no time limit, and it's okay wherever you are. It's okay. It's okay to be wherever you are. And if you're in that space where you just can't let go, it's okay. It's okay. There's no wrong. There's no right or wrong. You just gotta. Again, this is a very personal process. The next one it's sort of like an obvious one, but you have to forgive yourself. And oftentimes, and again, I go back to my own story. I made myself so wrong for so many years. I believed that I was a bad person. I believe that I deserved all of the bad that happened to me as an 8-year-old kid. So I had to learn to forgive myself. I had to learn to complete that part of my life. Without that, forgiveness is not possible. And then the last one, and this is an important one. You got to develop a forgiving heart. So you got to learn. This is as close to like get fitting, forgivingly fit. You got to learn to develop that forgiving heart. When you find yourself stuck, when you find yourself resentful, when you find yourself holding on, making somebody wrong, making, those quick judgments, just learn to hit the pause button, learn to reframe, and learn to practice developing a forgiving heart. So I hope this makes sense, Stephen, for you and for everyone listening.
Of course.
And if anything, I hope that at minimum take one of them and take it on as a way to practice forgiveness. What would you say, Stephen? How would you close today's show?
Well, I think the best part of this is first of all the subject matter, but even I know you said even take one, but when you start looking at everything you said in the subject of forgiveness, I think it's pretty amazing how you realize how they all tie together, and I think it, as it did me, helps you move forward with getting closer to forgiveness.
Yeah, and again, walk away. If anything, you walk away with this today. Forgiveness can be the greatest gift that you can give yourself during this holiday season. So I'm going to close with that. Thank you, everyone, for listening to today's show. Stephen, when can they find you?
Stephen the Medium.
Stephen the Medium, or eventually you could probably find him with the Rockettes somewhere.
Well, yeah, that will be coming. Yes,
that's
yes.
coming for sure. And you can find me at Coach Elix, and whether it's Instagram, Facebook, and if you don't follow me, you need to follow me, because all of these live shows are turned into a podcast that you can tune in and listen anywhere where podcasts are available. So we will be back not next week, because we're celebrating Christmas. So Merry Christmas to all of you, or Happy Holidays, whatever you celebrate. I wish you nothing but the best holiday season. And we'll be back the week after that. And that week we're going to talk about, I don't remember what we're going to talk about, but I think we're going to talk about New Year's resolutions. So that's it. Thank you for listening, and we will see you not next week, but the week after.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.